Yo, what is up YouTube? Brody here again, another video. Today we're going through a mix that I did. Just this past week, the song Never Said by Yusha released, and I had the pleasure of mixing and mastering this one. Turned out so cool, very excited. It's like a alt-rock, shoegazy, new metal kind of thing. Yusha, incredible artist. I'll link him and this song in the comments or in the description down below. He's an artist that I've been working with for a long time, since like early emo rap days. We've both been making music together. I've been mixing, engineering for them, and it's been really cool to see us both evolve and grow in the same kind of path down these years. And this song I think is a great example of that. So I kind of wanted to walk through and show, like, in a song like this, which is kind of similar to the music that I'm posting on this channel anyways, when I'm not writing it, when I'm just mixing and mastering it, how do I approach that? How do I approach purely a mix and master in this? I'll talk about like my routing, my session organization, mix tricks that I do, the process, reamping, sample replacement, all of that. I will include the session of this on my Patreon as well. So if you want to go in and look through this in even more depth and without me controlling it, with you kind of actually going in and combing through everything, you can find this session on my Patreon as well. But yeah, let's get into it. I'll run through a little bit of it, and it sounds like this.
My eyes are blurring the road lines. I'll try to weather the storm. Just wait for me in the headlights. When it rains, it pours. I never said I was sorry.
So yeah, that's the general vibe of this song. Very big, very powerful, shoegazy, but in these Yusha songs, I've noticed what we wind up doing is making the vocals a lot more forward, kind of mix it somewhere between a shoegaze song and like a pop rock kind of thing, where it's very vocal heavy, very like pop vocal melodies. I love it. I think it sounds huge. I think that everything is super powerful and upfront, with a lot of clarity, a lot of like emotion. Yeah, we'll go through. Starting off, what I'll do is Yusha, whoever is mixing the song of, will send me the stems. And before I do anything, I'm organizing the session. If you see all these little folders here, I'm kind of doing my buses, my groups, everything to like organize and make all the broad strokes decisions a lot easier. That way I'm not mixing like every track individually. So I'll kind of go through here. We have our drums. All the way at the top, I have muted demo, so I can unmute it, turn off my mastering chain, and reference it A/B if I need to. We have a bus, and the shortcut is Shift-Command-D to create a track stack, and that is essentially a bus in Logic, but it also is like a folder where you can tab in and out. So audio-wise, it's a bus, but visually it helps you kind of organize things. And I put all of my drums in a bus. I put my bass in a bus. Even though it's just one track, for my organization purposes, it makes sense. Then for my guitar, I have a bus. I do rhythm guitar and lead separately a lot of the times. So yeah, we have two different guitar parts here within the rhythm guitar bus. And then through the other guitar bus, which is like the leads, the clean guitars, we have them all separated. Essentially, it's like if I see myself wanting to mix a couple things similarly or as a group, I'll group them. So like all the clean guitars, I'd probably want to do similar processing. And I might do something separate on each of them, but I have different bus for anything that I'd want to mix like as a group. And it helps me make those broad strokes. You can get in there and do some mixing per track. Like you see, I have like a little bit of EQ and micro shift here, a little bit of reverb here, etc. But then I can go and apply something to all of it. From there, that is the instrumental side. We got drums, bass, guitar, ambient stuff. Then we have our vocals and our sends for our vocals. So again, the main vocal file here, which is bus 3. These sends are also being sent to bus 3. And the mains, doubles, harmonies, ad-libs, everything is going to here. So the entire vocal, including the reverbs and all of that, is all going to this bus. Instead of having to move all of these different tracks around, if I think in general, I just want the vocals as a whole to sit a little bit louder, a little bit quieter, it helps me make those fast decisions. Yeah, I find that anything like that helps me move quickly helps me make a better mix, because the faster I can solve a problem, the less mental energy it takes. So I can quickly get to the point. And I think that helps, because a lot of times it's like when I'm doing a mix, I view it as like it's a race between me getting the mix to sound good and my ears going blind to decisions or getting fried. And you can fix that by taking breaks, by stepping away, etc. But I like to try to get the mix to like 90% finished as fast as possible. That way I'm trusting my gut. I'm making the decisions that you want to hear right away. And I think that this grouping system helps me kind of on the fly get everything there. And then when it hits that 90%, that's when you can really tweak and like notch out resonant frequencies, make some creative decisions, really get into it. But yeah, kind of a tangent there, but I think that routing is super important. From there, we get our drums. I had Yusha send me the drum MIDI, and I used Superior Drummer with the death metal kit, which I talk about a lot here. But I just find that specifically within this genre, within the shoegaze, pop rock, like alternative, new metal kind of thing, I want drums that are very big and weighty, but also a lot of transients and snap to it. And I think that that's what these drums are doing. Let me solo that. Now we're also layering it with a sample of Yusha's because we wanted the snare to pop, but also have a little bit more weight to it. So but without it, add some like woodiness to it. Very subtle, but yeah. We have the drums here. Like I said, it's a bass of Easy Drummer, but I'm stacking some samples. Like a clickier kick, and then a more woody natural one. A handful of snare samples. I'm layering 3 different ones. So so initially I just used that snare, and it kind of hits. It's very poppy, transient, but we wanted to beef it up. This adds some woodiness, and this adds some side like ambience reverb and just a little more like weight to it. So yeah, overall 4 samples, but they're all aligned. They're all fulfilling a certain purpose of it. Versus the original that sounded like... So yeah, all the snares kind of come together and sound like one. Yeah, we started with the drums. Within Superior Drummer, I'm routing a few of the tracks to their own own tracks. So I have, for example, the kick doing very slight EQ on. The room mic also EQing. More for the side info. We have the snare track here doing some transients. I'm like killing the sustain a bit. Just making it a little bit choked, a little bit less sustained. That way it doesn't take up too much space in the mix. Some soothe on the cymbals, on the overheads. It sounds kind of muted on its own, but in the mix, I noticed it was a little too transient. A little too resonant, that's the word. It just allows me to make the cymbals a little bit louder without them sounding harsh. And I think that adds some of the energy to the song. Because the louder the cymbals are, the more high end energy, the more hype the song sounds in general. Then from there on our drum bus, some radiator, Oxford inflator, just to kind of sweeten things. Some API, bus compression, a little bit of EQ, limiter just to catch any stray transients, a little more shaping EQ. From there, we go to the bass. I like to kind of mix these since they're such the foundation of the song. I like to get these going first. Really simple, honestly. I'm starting off with a side chain to the drum kit. I didn't want just like a full volume side chain because I didn't want to have it be like too subtracting of the bass. I didn't want it to be like too pumping. So what I do is I sidechain with Soothe, and that does is it cuts out the sound of the frequency range of the kick only when the kick's happening. So I found that Soothe 2 is like the most transparent sidechain that you can get. See, I feel like 8 being that you can hardly hear a difference, but we are ducking out about like 3 dB of room for the kick when the bass is happening. And I find that it just allows me to get the song a little bit louder. It allows me to crank the LUFS a little bit more. Just makes everything glue in a very transparent way. From there, cutting some resonance. Saturn to just kind of add a little bit of nice saturation. And then a multi-band compressor. I like to super like infinity ratio, 100-to-1 ratio, my low end of the bass, just to kind of give it like no dynamics. Again, it depends on the song. That isn't like a all the time situation, but in a song like this, I want the bass guitar to almost be like a sub sine wave kind of thing. So it allows the top end to have the dynamics, have transients, but the low end is just riding that steadiness the whole time through. Next would be the guitars, but I find that I mix guitars last in the whole song in like kind of order of operation. I might get like the general volume there and then I forget about them until it's the end and I've struggled with this a lot, even as a guitarist first. Like that's my main instrument. I found that guitar is one of the harder things to mix because you want it to sound good on its own, but it's such a mid-range heavy instrument that I found that guitar sounds the best when it's made to fit the frequencies that the rest of the sounds aren't taking. So I'll get my drums, my bass, and my vocals sounding right, and then I'll have the guitars fill in around that. That way there's no competing. The mix can sound as clear as it can, and then the guitars, you kind of shape and make sound as big as it can in context of everything. And especially because I wound up reamping here, I wanted to get the mix sounding solid enough so I knew when reamping what type of tone would be most appropriate instead of making a tone I thought sounded cool and then having to carve out a bunch of space. So from there, we get our vocals. Now, what Yusha does, and what a lot of my mix clients do, especially a mix client that does produce and make their own demos and do pre-production, is they'll send me a dry, like no sense, there's no delay or reverb on their vocals, but they'll send me a vocal that is somewhat mixed already. I have no problem with, and a lot of times I do mix an entirely raw vocal, but with an artist that knows what they're doing with mixing and knows like the sound of their voice, I find that it's a little bit redundant or like not efficient for them to get a vocal chain that sounds like 80% how they want and then remove all the effects and then have me do the same thing again. And again, sometimes if we know that the artist's demo is not how it should sound, I'll take the raw files. But with these vocals, before any of the processing, Yusha did tuning the way that they like their tuning to sound. That's, again, a very particular thing per artist. So sometimes they like to do their own tuning. They tuned it, did some slight EQ, slight compression, and sounded like this.
Blurring the road line.
Mute everything but the main.
I'll try to weather the storm. Just wait for me in the headlights.
So yeah, it already sounds good. It's just not fully mixed, you know. The tuning sounds great. Very great amount of dynamics, compressed well, EQ'd well. Essentially what I did was a little bit of soothe as a de-esser.
My eyes are blurring.
I love distressor as a compressor with a little bit of saturation to it. I'll set it super low ratio to like 2:1, but then get a lot of gain reduction. But because it's a low ratio, it's more transparent, dynamic wise, but saturation and color wise, it gets really rich, especially because I'm running it with this distortion 3 here.
Blurring the road lines.
I'll kind of loop this section here.
I'll see you tomorrow. I fall apart.
Another de-esser.
Crumbles in sorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
Micro shift as like a faux doubler / like room ambience thing. I'll use the lead vocal clarity preset and very low mix in there.
I'll see you tomorrow.
And it kind of just adds some side information. It kind of sounds like they're in a room versus totally isolated. A little bit of brightness with this Aphex Vintage Exciter. Shaping EQ. Multi-band compressor. Just catching any de-essing extra, any low-end like proximity effect, and then this is just extra tightening. And yeah, really very subtle, like the sound difference between this
Crumbles in sorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
It has the same vibe. It has the same energy. It just within the mix will sound a little bit tighter. Before I add the sends, I'll go through the main box here. So each individual track, I'm kind of doing, if you see, very similar chain, and I'm doing this differently for the mains, doubles, harmonies, etc., because I want to compress them differently. If I'm compressing to that, like through that distressor with like a 10:1 or a 10 dB of gain reduction, for example, when all the vocals happen at the same time, the loudest one will kind of go on top and they'll push each other around. So I like to do all of those separately and then bust them all together after the fact. But yeah, I'm doing that per track.
I'll see you tomorrow. I fall apart. Crumbles in sorrow.
Turn off all the sends. Then on the Vox altogether, like the main Vox bus, I am doing some volume. Just because gain staging wise, the vocals are really quiet compared to the rest. I needed to boost that up in volume. I'm going to bring the drums and bass in from here on out so you guys can hear. Just some gain staging. Some balancing EQ. More multi-band. OTT. I've come to really enjoy OTT as like a bus compressor or something just to like make everything up front. It's very aggressive, but if you blend it into a slow amount, it levels things nicely. It adds some nice top end that in a more modern mix can be really helpful. Without it, I just think that's super present, super upfront. And because it's multi-band, it allows you to kind of get the high end to be really consistent on its own. I mean, all of the bands, but especially on the high end, you hear the like clarity up front. It's kind of opposite of on the bass guitar, how we want those sub frequencies to be really steady. I kind of want the same on the top end. That way, when an S sound or something comes out, it's not so transient that it like hurts your ears. I find that's a very pleasing top end because like a lot of times you make something brighter, then all of a sudden it's harsh, it hurts, it's too much. Oxford inflator. Just a little bit of sine wave shaping, like a soft clipping type effect. It is sine wave shaping, but they're similar. But just a little bit to like just add some more excitement. You hear it in the mid frequency, I think. This makes it sound a little bit closer, a little more strong, a little more de-essing. If you notice, there's a lot of things that I'm doing multiple times in this chain. I'm de-essing a lot. I'm doing multiband compression a lot. And that is because I find that little moves, like incremental moves, can be more effective, especially in the signal chain. Like, for example, I know there's already de-essing happening per here, but when you start adding new plugins in, especially when I started adding that OTTN, for example, with de-essing, you're bringing down the S's, but then you might be boosting them again later with more. And instead of boosting the S's a ton and then having to de-ess a ton, that would sound less transparent. It would sound more processed. Kind of just compensating on the way makes it sound a lot more clean. It makes no one plugin have to work super hard. A little bit of radiator for some saturation. Some EQ. Some softening. More de-essing. More gain, just for like, again, gain staging. Cutting out some of the side frequency of the doubles, the harmonies, some of the sends. Then some mid shaping. Because sometimes I'll find that the sides might be. I'll see you tomorrow. There's a lot of low end frequency on the sides that was kind of competing with the guitars. So I cut that. And then to kind of compensate, I boost a little bit in the middle. That way you're getting rid of the sides, but you're making the important frequencies really up front, right in the center. Crumbles in sorrow. And that's our vocal chain. It's a lot of little steps to get to a big difference. It sounded like a small change every time, but going that to crumbles in sorrow is a big difference, I think. Aside from the obvious volume difference, it's just a whole lot more focused, a whole lot more fitting. From there, we add all the sends that we have going on. I'll bring them in one at a time. Actually, I'll turn them all on and then show. So we have this room reverb, Valhalla room going on here. Cutting out some mid frequencies. We have a delay that I'm only putting on the main vocal. I didn't want my delay to be too busy, so I only put it on the main vocal and the rest are just verb. We're de-essing before the delay. I like to de-ess my sends hard sometimes. That way it's not distracting. If you hear like a sound moving around in the sides, it can really get in the way. So yeah, this one's fun. I'm using Primal Tap as the delay, but then I'm phasing before, putting a phaser on before to make it have a lot of motion and movement, kind of like shoegazy thing. Then to soften the delay afterwards, I'm adding a little bit of room reverb. I think that makes a big difference. I like to put a little bit of verb on my delays because without, very dry. Now it sounds more natural, a little softer. Then we have our Space Echo, the UAD Galaxy tape. It's like a Space Echo emulation. Really rich, thick sound. On the left side, it is a it is a delay, and on the right side it's a reverb. So it gives us this big stereo width, but it's different on each side. It sounds really rich, really cool, really interesting. And all together,
Crumbles in sorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
versus
I fall apart. Crumbles in sorrow.
and I feel like it's really, really nice. I think that it's important to make the flavor of your delay and reverb match the song. Sometimes, if it's a more clean song, you want a very clear plate reverb, a very unaffected delay. But in a song like this, it's really cloudy, really washy, really shoegazy. I think having some modulated, weird, spacey sounds really makes a difference. Even if it is tucked in the back and you don't notice that much of it in the mix, I think that altogether it adds a lot to the sound of it.
Crumbles in sorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. I fall apart. Crumbles in sorrow.
Really rich, really full. I love how that sounds. And from there, we get to the guitar. I had a lot of fun with the guitar on this song. We'll start off simple. Okay, so before we get into the reamping, I'll show a simple thing here that I didn't reamp. That this is just Yusha's thing. Kind of similar to how I do in a lot of my songs with ambience and like reverb tails. Yusha did a similar thing. There are these swells that are happening, which is like a reverse of a guitar impact or a volume automation, something to just kind of really bring us into a section.
Road lines.
Then we have this texture that is an infinite reverb, similar to what I'm doing a lot in my videos. Just a very washed out pad. So without it and with it, this creates this really pleasing bed for everything to sit on. Then we'll go into rhythm guitar. I tracked the rhythm guitar all on my PV VTM over here. Very like perfect amp for 90s shoegaze, rock, new metal kind of tones. And what I wound up doing was actually, I thought I was going to quad track and do a pass through with a tube screamer with my blues driver as a boost, and then a pass through with a really thick fuzz to get this huge wall of sound tone. And I tracked, as you can see here, left and right of both of those, and then realized it sounded more interesting to me if I had a different one on either side, kind of sounding like two different guitar rigs in a way. I did a layer of this. Oh, sorry, let me isolate that. A layer of this on the left, the blues driver. A little more tight, a little more focused. Still very thick and fuzzy. And then a layer of the fuzz on the right side. A lot bigger, a lot woolier, less transients. But then together, one kind of carries the weight and one kind of carries the clarity. So essentially what I'm doing, I'll share the tracks I have hidden here. Yusha sent me all of the DIs here. For example, this is what it would sound like. Just pure clean track. Essentially just their unplugged guitar. Took that, set the output in Logic to output 3 on my interface. And then from output 3 on my interface, I'm plugging it into my pedal board. So essentially the cable that I would plug into my guitar, I'm plugging into my interface as output. Out of the output on my interface, into my pedal board, through my amp, and then recording it back into Logic. So I'm able to switch all the tones, demo a bunch of different pedals, get the tone right without having to play it, and just be able to really focus, think about where something would fit the most. Talking again about fitting a mid-range instrument like a guitar in context, I wanted a big fuzzy tone, but I wanted it to be not taking up the space of the rest. So I'll play without, then I'll play with the rhythm to show you what I mean. So yeah, the guitars are really big, they're really loud, they're really upfront, but they're very panned left and right. There's not much happening in the middle. they're not too high end, and the low end is controlled enough to where they're not in the way of anything. Now, processing them, I did cut out a good bit of resonance and things that were a little bit harsh. So, for example, you can hear this spike. Some more spiking within here. And then I did a little bit of room reverb blended in on each of these as well, just to make them sound like not 100% dry, make them sound like they're in the room. Same on this side. And then I'm doing a little bit of EQ, some sidechain soothing to the vocals. Again, to make enough space for everything. That's another trick with the transparent soothe sidechain that I love. That really helps the vocals and guitar separate from each other, especially because they live in a similar vocal range there. From there, I'm doing just a slight more soothing over the whole thing. A little bit of EQ balancing here. And then I'm compressing them all together with the LA3A. Just some glue. You always said you would haunt me. I think those sound awesome. Another thing that I'm doing, so you noticed I cut out a lot of resonant frequencies within the guitars. And I've noticed for me, and I don't know if you picked up on this listening through, but a lot of times, unless it's really apparent, I won't notice the resonant frequency until I've taken it out and then bring it back in. And one thing that I've done that I found is really helpful in figuring out which frequencies are okay in adding character and which frequencies are detracting and getting in the way of a mix is in my mastering, I'm using Metric AB. And what it does, it's a plugin that lets you compare your mix to other mixes you put in here. I've added a handful of other songs, mixes that I've done, mixes that I know the artist likes that are a similar genre. And what I'll do is, in general, in mastering, I'll use this to compare my loudness, the EQ, the overall sound of my mix compared to what I'm referring to here. And I found that that really is helpful for guitar resonance. I'll listen to the mix I'm working on, flip to another, and then flip back, and then all of a sudden, whoa, there's this like hiss that I didn't notice. And this has been really helpful for it. So I'll use, for example, this lay-in song, Shoulder, that I mixed. I'll go back and forth, and you can hear what I'm talking about. So listening to both of those, you can tell that they're very different mixes. I wasn't trying to use this plugin to make them sound exactly the same, but I use this plugin as a reference. Metric AB, awesome for mastering, also really nice for shifting back and forth and hearing any discrepancies between like guitar, drums, etc., anything that's harsh. I really recommend that. From there, we hit our lead guitars, clean guitars, etc. This clean guitar also through the PV on its clean channel, added a little bit of phaser, a little bit of delay and reverb. It sounds like this. Some soothe, less soothe. I didn't really need much because it's a clean tone. Some gluing compression. Some room reverb. These aren't reamped tones. These were just Yusha's tones. Some very clean ambient guitar. Then we hit our lead guitars. I wound up blending, here's Yusha's tone. I liked the brightness of it. And then here's my tone. Wound up using my reamping as a like layering tool versus a replacement. I ran it through my Digitech Whammy octave pedal, and boosted it up an octave just to give some more interesting factor to it. But by itself, I felt like it was too much. So I layered them. Then we have this tone in the verse. And yeah, those all fill out really nicely. I like the song's approach to leads because they're a lot more textural. There's nothing too intense or fast happening. It's all very mood shaping more than anything. Love how that sounds. And yeah, that then gets through all of it. That is the approach. That is how I mixed this song. Again, starting from the file management, the organization, so I can make the broad strokes if I need to. I went through all the different chains I had on these. I talked about my vocal chain, my approach to vocals, my approach to having clients send me vocal stems. Talked about my guitar shaping as the glue in between the other instruments. I went through my reamping using metric AB as a tool to compare your mix to other mixes and compare your resonant frequencies and harsh sounds to notice things in yours compared to others. That way you don't go ear blind to anything that you're working on, which is a very real problem and a very real breakthrough in having a better mix, is being aware of what you are used to hearing and what is kind of growing immune in your ear. But yeah, that is how I mixed Never Said by Yusha. Made it this far, I appreciate it. This video is a lot more intense and in-depth with details than my songwriting ones, just by the nature of mixing versus writing, like left brain versus right brain kind of things. So if there's anything that I went through on this video too quickly, please ask a question, please let me know, and I can try to explain in more detail and either in a response in another video, etc. I want to make sure that I'm not going too slow, but also not going over heads too much with this kind of thing. But yeah, Never Said by Yusha. Thank you guys so much. I will include the session of this on my Patreon as well. So if you want to go in and look through this in even more depth and without me controlling it, with you kind of actually going in and combing through everything, you can find this session on my Patreon as well. That all being said, thank you all so much and peace out.